Good evening, all, and welcome to this second lecture in the Going Public lecture series of the Faculty of Architecture of the KU Leuven. Maybe the screen can, yeah, super, thanks. Hi. As I said, this is a second lecture from this spring lecture series, the Going Public lecture series of the Faculty of Architecture, the KU Leuven, Campus St. Lucas Ghent and Brussels. And we are broadcasting on the one hand from Brugge in West Flanders with a view on the Concertgebouw right in front of me, celebrated 20 years, and I think also a fitting view, at least in my case, to celebrate architectural projects and architectural drawings as we will do tonight. We have a very tight and busy schedule tonight. And so I will briefly introduce what we will be seeing tonight and then give the floor to the first speaker. So we will have the presentation and the launch of the 4th volume of the Architectuur book from St. Lucas. This will be introduced by Sophie Laenen, one of our colleagues. That will be followed by a duo lecture by LENNART VANDEWAETERE and MARIUS VANEECKHOUTTE from Wissel Studio. After that, we will have a brief moment of questions, Q&A, and then Harrold Fallon will introduce and announce the winners of the Eugeen-Tanja Selection for this year. Before we do that, a bit of protocol. If you have some questions, if you want to ask the questions, please drop them in the Q&A. I will read those questions to the presenters in order to have a very fluent and smooth running of the evening. So also if you want to start the conversation, want to start the discussion on the subjects, then please do so in the Q&A. Without further ado, I'm giving the floor to Sophie Laenen, who will launch this 4th volume of the Architectuur book. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Good evening and welcome. So yes, we are very proud to present the 4th edition of Lucas Architectuur book, the Eugeen-Tanja Selection. It all started 4 years ago when Jan de Wilder had the wonderful idea to honor a special teacher like Eugeen by offering him the opportunity to award a double prize. De Kleine Grote Prijs Tanja for a student and de Grote Kleine Prijs Eugeen for a lecturer. So one prize for a project made by a student at school and one project made in a studio by an architect. Every year, students submit projects by semester, and every year the number is growing. These entries are viewed by Eugeen and a committee of teachers. After long deliberation and with the necessary enthusiasm, the selection is made. Eugeen was a teacher who invited students to debate and to question, with words but also with drawings. After all, Tanja, from the title of the book, is a drawing. Tanja is a drawing by an architect who allows architecture to be much more than just architecture. Tanja is a drawing by Eugeen. The drawing does not show everything, it shows just enough to suspect everything. She was drawn to dream. That is also what we looked for in these submissions, the potential to dream and to imagine. Drawings and models are essentials for the development and communication of architecture. They make us think, desire, dream. Students show their skills with it. Teachers can intervene. a dialogue takes place. We hope with this book to establish an overall dialogue, a dialogue that encourages debate. Students have been submitting their projects for 4 years now. This year, the drawing, especially the process drawing, received extra attention. In this edition, you will find remarkably more drawings. Process drawings, concept drawings, drawings about materialization, drawings about construction, and so on. It's surprising how diverse the entries are and how diverse the personalities. Students visualize the world of their project in their own way. This is what makes the selection so special and what makes it unique to our school. Lucas Architecture wants to celebrate the architectural projects, and more precisely the project of the students. The book consists of a selection of 40 student works, extracted from last year's studios at KLE, Faculty of Architecture, Ghent and Brussels. But the book is also about the teaching staff. Following the selection of the submitted student work for this year's edition, we asked the teaching staff of those students to do 2 things. Of course, a summer came after a long pandemic year, somewhere already elsewhere, and could not react. Still, a nice amount of answers came true. First, we asked the teachers to send in some pictures of their own work in order to reveal proximities between students and teachers and coherences across studios and architecture practices. In a word, to reveal what makes a school. Second, they were asked to write a brief text about the student work and what made it special. We were surprised to see the very diverse way in which this writing was addressed. Some wrote a short description of the studio, others praised their students, others still provided a theoretical or even a templatory context.
Maybe here again, there is a striking diversity of inclinations, and still you can clearly feel the school behind it. Based on the submitted work, we ask one lecturer to present on the book presentation. So this evening, we introduce you to, as they are part of Wissel Architecture Studio, LENNART VANDEWAETERE and MARIUS VANEECKHOUTTE. Teaching in first and second year, their work has not escaped our notice. Wissel consists out of 3 members. The third is Felix Hietekatte. Their project, the Tower of Seoul, is currently on display on the ground floor of the campus in Brussels. I would definitely check it. Wissel is an architecture studio based in Brussels. Wissel tries, dares, acts and interacts. Wissel shifts between drawing, model and image. Wissel researches anatomically. Wissel ignores the obvious in search for the unexpected. Wissel is a change of course in a thinking process. Wissel is a cross-fertilization between thinking and acting. Wissel is searching for function transcending spatiality. Wissel is an act of changing to or adapting one thing to another. Wissel changes the position, direction, or focus at any time. Wissel is a verb. I give the word to Lennart and Marius. Please come to here. And after, the winners will be announced and the prizes awarded. So be sure to stay with us. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hello.
Okay, thanks for the lovely introduction, Sophie. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone online. I am Marius, this is Leonard. Together with Felix, we are Wissel Architectuur Studio. And we're going to talk about two projects that we did in the last 2 years. Two of them have one picture in the new magazine. And the first project we're going to talk about is a reconversion of a row house in Beckham, Antwerp. For us, it's a pretty special project because it's the first one we started designing actually with the three of us as an office. Before that, we were three friends who tried to do projects next to our other jobs, but this is the first one we really took the time to make the first Wissel project in full. We did this together with Labo, Frédéric Tonneau, a structural engineer who also teaches at this school. And the first picture is actually a picture the day we took when we did the measurements for the house, the existing situation. You can see Felix, the third member of Wissel, and you see him together with Leonard in the existing hallway. The first thing we found really intriguing about the project was the back facade, because it had a really interesting brick volume, which was an old space, but the biggest problem we had with the existing situation was that there was no connection to the garden at the ground floor. But still, we were really intrigued by the upper part of the house, which was all in brick and masonry. We start by talking about the pre-design. We organized our presentation as a process. Especially, we made the presentation for students to see the process of how we do architecture ourselves, because student work is also a process, and it's the same for us. We struggle, we look for options, we hesitate, we try, and so we develop a concept and a design. These are the first sketches we made like 2 years ago. We started the project in January 2020. Just a couple of months before lockdown 1 started. So this is basically our Corolla baby project. The first idea was to do something with the ground floor, to somehow break it open to the garden, but we had no idea how to do that yet. So the first basic instinct was to break open the ground floor and to design some kind of facade system around it and wrap it around it and maintain the brick volume on the +1, which eventually was going to be the bathroom. These are organization options we tried out in the beginning of the pre-design. This basically tells us that it always comes down with a good position of the toilet. As weird as it would sound, it's really a very important part of the plan, where to put the toilet. And it's actually kind of last piece we needed to fit the puzzle of the ground floor. This is the first model we made, which is actually the idea of the wrapping facade around the ground floor. But at this point, we had no idea how we were going to lift this big brick volume on top of it. This is one of the first sketches we made, because another really important thing about the house is that the garden is orientated to the north. So we have a lot of possibilities to drag light into the house, and we don't have to be scared for overheating and too much glass. So this is the first hint of what we were going to do with the facade afterwards. And this is a kind of Yeah, this is a print screen of a Zoom conversation we had in March 27, beginning of the lockdown, where we tried to get a grip on the pre-design, all the three of us in our houses. And soon after this Zoom conversation, we got to the first big part of the pre-design.
One of the main questions of the project was actually how we could preserve the existing ensemble on top of the ground floor, which we want to give some new functions. And this is probably one of the most important sketches from the pre-design, because it's also became our main concept, let's say. And instead of just holding up the upper part, so the existing ensemble on top of it, with a normal concrete beam, we were thinking to stretch out those lintel, those classic standard lintel, and to make a kind of table from it. The idea was growing to make a concrete table from it, who was functioning as a stretched lintel. And the nice thing about those ideas, it was really holding up the existing situation, but also it created some kind of a free plan under it. So we were really free with those ideas to place all the structural points where we wanted it, and to create also a free canvas for the facade structure. So this is the implementation, or the first implementation of this concrete table in our plan. And on the left side, you see all those red market points. Those are the first. Yeah, this is really the first tryout to positionate the concrete columns. And here you can also see immediately the quality of this idea of the table, because it's enlarging the fourth room, which becomes now a garden room, let's say.
And this drawing was actually also a standstill before we were going to draw all the plans to hand in the documents for the permit we needed from the city of Antwerp to do this reconversion. And it's also important because here we decide what rooms we were going to put in sequence. On the right, you can see the existing house, where we keep the situation as much as possible how it was. And then the two rooms on the left are actually the new sequence where we put the kitchen, but also two different rooms which are positioned in the back to the garden, but also a room underneath the glass dome you can see on the top. And actually the sequence of these four rooms going from the facade to the garden is actually a kind of walkthrough or a spatial experience we wanted to try. The first thing we noticed was by something's happening to the presentation. Just a second. Okay, never mind. One of the first things that we noticed while testing the idea of the concrete table in model was that it allowed us to, the level of the concrete table allowed us to put a big glass dome on top of it to get all the light into the existing parts of the house. Because it's oriented to the north, we were free to do that, and this is the first model we made where we could experience the light coming through to the facade in front. These are drawings we made to discover how to put the columns of the concrete table. This is also research for the back facade, the level of the concrete slab, the dome on top. It's something we do in Wissel a lot. We make models and then we sketch again. We make new models, we sketch again. And I make a sketch, I give it to Leonard, he gives it to Felix. And in that way, we go on. This is a new version of the concrete table. This is a classic Wissel moment where actually we go too far and we design too complex structure. We want sliding windows, but it was a bit too much at this point. Because it was lockdown, we had a lot of time for this design, so we made a lot of options in this space. And this is a typical moment where we try to implement too much into the design. And this is a drawing. It's basically a technical section, but it's also a perspective of how we would want to experience the garden from inside the new rooms. So this is basically the end of the pre-design, where we discovered a lot of joints and construction moments which we didn't work out yet.
So, and then we started with the tendering phase. As Marius said, the ideas were quite wild. The design was full of nice ideas, but all those ideas need to be constructed as well. So we started the tendering phase with the new existing situation. Excuse me, the new facade structure, let's say. Something we always do with Wissel is using a lot of references. So the reference is an important thing in our process, but mostly we don't show the reference only as a reference, but we always try to show it as a two-sided image, and we always try to give an immediately interpretation of it next to it. And this is really an example of it. It's coming straight out of the process bundle, this page, and on the left side you see a painting of Edward Hopper, which is quite famous for his colors, his light, shadow, but he's also quite well known because of his architectural details. In this situation, in this reference, we find out a very interesting roof edge. And on the right side, you see our interpretation on sketch. So first of all, above the sketch above, we try to figure out how this roof edge is working exactly. But immediately under it, we start re-seeing all those we start to reinterpret this idea of the roof edge, the gutter edge from Hopper, and it becomes quite fast our own interpretation. Here on the left side, you see one of our final sketches from those roof edge, and the idea was actually to start stitching for making. So actually we have a concrete table. On top of it there is a part of isolation, so it's a very thick package, and to make those package smaller from the outside, we pushed the facade carpentry above, and we brought it in line with the concrete table. So the bottom from the structure, from the windows, and the bottom from the concrete table are in line with each other. And then the gutter, we placed it in the center of the sink slab on top of that, which makes those roof edge much more elegant, and those gutters starting to become a very dominant thing in our design. On the left side, again, a reference. It's a very classic reference from Josef Plečnik. And what we really like about this image is, again, the whole gutter concept, which is more centered on the roof edge. And on the right side, you see the first image of our tendering model. And those two images next to each other are really good explaining what we want to do with this roof edge. So somehow those references are not only about atmosphere materials, but they can also present a kind of detail. And we think that the classic interpretation of the reference from Plečnik, it's really communicating with our existing ensemble on top of it. The next step was to figure out the facade structure. So we did already a lot of research in the pre-design by Marius. Yeah, that was Marius was explaining that. But yeah, in the tendering phase, we need to make that possible. We need to make that constructible. And then we were searching for the right composition of windows, the framing, but also yeah, thinking about where do we add doors, where do we add just window frames. And in this sketch, you see that we were thinking about using two doors. One door who is connecting the third room under the light dome, and the other door on the left side is actually making a connection with the fourth room, which we can call the garden room somehow. But after a lot of discussions with the clients, we yeah, they wanted to have a more inner space, and we came out with this final technical drawing, and we chose to make in the sport room to use only windows and no doors to make those this garden room much more kind of inner space. In this technical drawing, some things are coming together: the whole gutter concept, the window structure, but also the plinth. We were thinking to work with a bluestone plinth, as you can see in this model also, to make the project more mature, and also to make again those relation with the existing house. For us, the tendering model is a really important tool. It's something that we use constantly to actually test things, to take out all the blind spots, let's say. And the model is actually never lying. It's always a very honest document where you can test things and see how materials are combined together, how the compositions are working, and how the inner space is working. This is a sketch from the inner part. And of course, we also were searching for the reversion of the bluestone plinth from the outside. And it became a kind of concrete wall, or we start thinking about the concrete wall. And this concrete wall was a nice element because it was somehow also part of the concrete table, a concept from the early phase. And also this concrete wall could also function as a kind of bench. Somehow we also needed to make the detail from it. On the left side, you see our detailed drawing. On the right side, again, a reference from Peter Zutter. It's from his atelier in Chur in Switzerland. And what we really like about this image is, of course, the concrete bench, which is actually combined with the window facade structure. But also those benches not only an aesthetic thing or a functional thing as bench, but it's also a reverse beam. And that's the same in our project. So the concrete wall is really a part of the foundation, and also starts to be a huge part of the structural impact of the whole table and the whole foundation concept. Another important thing to discover was the whole idea of the light well. On the left side, we see again a winter garden reference from Laenen in Mechelen. It's a very ancient project, but we really like the structural concept. So it all starts with the window framing, and on top of this window framing, you see those steel L profiles who are making the bridge to the trusses from the light dome. And those L profiles were actually a good answer in our project to make some space for the gutters. On the right side, you see some sketches, which are actually the first basic sketches we made to come to this important section in our in our project. So this section is explaining how our light dome is working, our light well, let's say. So on the right side, you see on the bottom the concrete table where the L profile is is putted on, and on the left side you see that those L profiles are really hanging on the existing building, and they're making place for the gutters, and on top of it there are the trusses who are creating this light. And again, always the same model, of course, but again we were testing everything in model to check out if every detail was actually fitting well. And here you can also see that all things where I was just talking about are coming together. So the concrete wall, the concrete table, the facade structure, and also the steel profiles. So the steel L profiles who are supporting the trusses from the light well. These are the let's say the final documents from the tendering phase, and so now it's time to have the construction.
Yeah, we started this construction with these images in our mind. We were really convinced ourselves as designers with these models, but also our client. So this was kind of the bar that we rose to before we went into construction. The first important thing to do was actually build a temporary structure to maintain the brick volume on top, and to make room for our contractor to realize the concrete table, which was the biggest action actually in our design, but it was also the first thing to start construction with. Here we can see the concrete table when it was constructed, together with precise choice of where to put steel columns. You can also see the concrete beneath it. And it was really important to realize that this was actually final structure. It was going to be visible in the interior. So this was the finishing of the table as well. So we realized the importance of it. And also when you construct something, it's never 100% the measurements you thought about. It has a lot of small mistakes, small alignments you didn't expect. So we made this drawing during construction to communicate with the carpenter who came after the concrete table. He had to make the wooden facade structure, which was going to go under the table, but also the wooden light well, the light dome that came on top of it. After that, we're still in construction phase, no interior whatsoever, but at this point, our main concept was actually realized. We had our dome, we had our table, and we had our facade system, which opened up the whole house to the garden. During construction, we often look back to the model pictures to see if everything's going according to plan. If everything is going how we hoped it would. We also use these pictures to communicate with our contractors, to explain some really precise joints and knots that we thought about. So this was also a big struggle during construction. This was not an easy construction site, but at some points during the construction, we were happy with the result, especially when we looked to the light well. It's basically the same as our model. So that's actually the goal we had with this model, and this was a small victory for us during a very difficult construction phase. This speaks a bit for itself. Really, it's the view from the existing house to the garden, and then the view from the garden to the new facade, where you can see that now the concrete table has been covered by carpentry with the door, but also the wood that we needed to construct the light well, which after that, that's actually this is basically how it is at this moment in construction. Now we're waiting for the contractor to finish the roof. It's going to be the table is going to be covered with the zinken roof, which is actually going to be built next week, but we had a small delay because of the stormy weather we had last week. And this is the final view. It shows this is the realization of the drawing we made earlier, how the carpentry and the facade would fit with the concrete table. And now we are preparing the construction site for the interior. And this is a fragment where you can see the existing facade on the left side of the picture, how the concrete table is still going to be visible when the interior is finished. And we also see the structure, how it's aligned with the table, which eventually supports the light well. Together with Frédéric Tonio, we chose precise points where to put steel cables, because the light dome is quite heavy and it pushes to the side. So we put two visible steel cables to maintain stability. Then we looked back to the model we made during tendering phase, where you can see a wide volume, which is going to be the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. So this wide volume in front is an abstraction from the kitchen, and we ended up the tendering phase with those abstractions. And now we're also working on the interior. The interior is also part of our project, and this is a model from the same volume from the previous model. And yeah, here you can see how we translated already those white box to a very specific piece of furniture. We made already all drawings, and the carpenter is actually now working on it. And this whole interior project is something in process now. The other project that we will explain is the Tower of Seoul. It's also presented in the publication of Eugeen-Tanja Selection. The Tower of Seoul is a think model. It's a think model, and the whole process started up by seeing this drawing. It's a drawing from Solowit. Solowit is a very well-known artist. It's an influencer, maybe one of the most important influencers of the minimal art. He made a lot of wall drawings. He's very famous for his wall drawings and also line drawings. And what he also did a lot was making combination drawings, and this is one of those combination drawings. So you have a square, and in the square you have 4 lines, and he put it on a simple page, all combinations of those lines. On top you see the combination of the 2 straight lines and the 2 diagonal lines. And then you see on the bottom, for example, on the right side, all the lines together. What we did was just seeing this as a kind of plan. Solowit, he was graduated as a graphic designer, but after that he starts working for a while as architect in an architecture office. And somehow every time we see pieces of art from Solowit, we see somehow architecture in it. And on the left, you see the first drawing from those ID from the Tower of Seoul, and we're really reading this piece of art as a plan. So the situation where we have all the lines combined is the ground floor. The situation of the single lines are the upper floors. And what makes it very interesting, because how higher you go, how less walls there are. And the next step was, as architect, of course, was trying to make something as those very abstract towers, yeah, to make architecture from it. So we start to deduplicate all the walls to put staircases in it. And all those staircases are creating circulation, and figure out this whole circulation concept was actually the main thing of making those tower accessible. On the left side, you see again the art piece of Solowit. On the right side, you see all, yeah, actually our interpretation with the deduplicated walls, the staircases in it, and how higher you go, how less possibilities of circulation there are. So somehow it's also, yeah, communicating with the reality on the ground floor. It's full of people, and how higher you go, how more place there is for you as person. So how less circulation you have, and also how bigger the spaces are coming.
And then also, beginning of 2020, there was an entry for projects during the design week in Milan. We sent in the idea. We actually sent in this drawing, because at that point, the idea of the Tower of Seoul was only in our minds. It's actually an idea. The first part of the idea was an idea Lennart had, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, when we were still living together just after we graduated. But then we got selected to show the model at the venue in Milan, which was actually fake, authentic, iconic around. And then the concept changed. It was not an idea anymore. It was something we wanted to build into a model. So from that point, we stopped thinking abstractly about it, and we tried to find a way how to make this into an actual model. Then we looked back to Solowit, because he also made a lot of abstract models, which are not architecture, but one could find inspiration for it in architecture. And also the way they were always in white, super abstract, no real materials, really fitted our idea. So we took a bit of that atmosphere into how we were going to make our model. This is the first mock-up we made on the left during the first lockdown, how to see how the rooms would reenact with each other, also the height. This is scale 1 to 50, so we put figures inside to see what the height was. Imagine it as a real building, but more than that, it was really a model for thinking about architecture, but not for being architecture. And the right picture is actually the second mock-up we made in our office here in Brussels. This is an important drawing because it's a technical drawing made by Felix, which I see sitting over there. And it's a drawing. It's basically how to fit it into a puzzle. We drew it out as one big puzzle, how to fit the walls into the slabs and how to make it stable, because it was going to be a pretty high and slender model. The walls really needed to fit into the slabs to make it durable. After that, we cut it out of MDF into a laser cutter, and we had to paint all the floors, which was actually a big task for us, because this is actually a project we did like purely for ourselves. This is not for a client. This is for us an imagination of a celebration of imagination in architecture, apart from a function. And this is the picture on the right is during the painting process in the garage of Lennart and Forst.
Here on the left side, you can see the structural ID in sketch from the tower. So all the levels are fitting on each other, but because of the single walls on top, we need to have also a structural system. So we choose to work with steel cables, and the socle is actually working as our foundation for the tower. So there are steel cables on top, fitting on top. They're really crossing the whole tower, and yeah, they're fitting socle. And let's say as every building has his own foundation, our tower also has his own foundation, and that's the socle. On the right side, in the picture you see the socle, which is standing open, and therein you can see the structural system.
Just before we had to ship it to Milan for the expo, we were quite lucky that like the office next to our office in Brussels was empty. So we took pictures of them here in Brussels before shipping it to Milan. And the right picture is actually a big moment for us because it was an idea we had for 6 or 7 years. And we had one day to look at it ourselves, and then we put it in a big box and we let it drive through Milan. This is a fragment picture we took of it because for us it's very important how the rooms are connected to each other, and it was an idea we had for a long time that at first we could experience ourselves. And at this moment, the model is placed into the space next to us, which is in the hallway here in Brussels at the campus. The door is open. It's going to be here for another week, and you can go in and have a look from next to it.
To see it in reality. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know how this goes, but
We're
are there
finished.
questions?
We are finished.
Hi, Lennart, Marius. Thank you very much for this insight in your work and the intricacy in which you try to merge concept and execution into well-crafted objects and architectures and spaces. Maybe there is some time for some questions. So if some of the audience have some questions for Wissel Studio, then you can drop them in the Q&A so that we can read them out to Marius and Lennart from Wissel Studio. Don't see any questions popping up at the moment, then maybe we can move to our next item on the agenda, the long-awaited announcement of the winners of the Eugeen-Tanja Selection. Maybe Lennart and Marius, thank you very much for your kindness and your generosity in sharing your work with us. And I give the floor to Harrold Fallon to make some people proud and happy. Harrold, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. Eugeen could not be here today, so he asked me to represent him and to translate to English the allocution that he has prepared and to read it for you. So now you must imagine I am Eugeen Liebout. We are proud that our architectural projects in the workshops, in the studios, are mainly about the redevelopment or the remodeling of existing buildings. Our case studies concern currently built-up areas, or at least formerly built-up areas. After all, it is wrong to build on the few remaining undeveloped places in our increasingly built landscape. Ethically speaking, we are doing the right thing in our studios. In contrast to what is happening outside the walls of the school, where everything is being built on at an increased rate. We can see the work in our studios and the prizes which are awarded today as a silent protest against this. For decades, researchers and schools of architecture have been denouncing the urbanization of our open landscape. Despite the well-intentioned concrete ban, betonstop, despite all committees and master architects, the situation continues to evolve dramatically. It is no longer enough to write about it. Politicians shout out loud that this is no longer possible, but they completely lack the courage to introduce an actual stop. Our education as a commitment to society. It is nice and encouraging that we commit ourselves to sustain small-scale projects, but in the meantime, the little remaining undeveloped space is being taken up in a dramatic way. Everywhere, building companies and promoters take the initiative. They no longer wait for a client and they do not build according to an architect's plans. No, they systematically buy up all the remaining land and put up so less buildings there, which are easy for them to realize in order to sell and maximize profit. Or they buy up old, beautiful square farms and after demolition, parcel them out for stupid box-shaped white villas. Demanding architects are not needed anymore. Their role is here reduced to the compulsory signature of the building permit applications. I can give you here one out of many examples, freely translated from a website. Brickbouw in Herzele has stood for top quality for 30 years. As professionals and experienced builders, we make the difference with high-quality housing and new construction projects for the most demanding customers, in which residents can feel at home in our quality. From the purchase of a land to a fully finished project, Brickbouw brick houses care for the total picture. We are active all over East Flanders for the most diverse reconstruction projects. In Nebeke, Dendermonde, Gent, Oudenaarde, Zottegem, Ninove, Gerhardsbergen, Aalst, and so on. We have beautiful projects and building plots on the agenda all the time. Take a look at our future plans and feel free to contact us if you are interested. The government and the administration participate in this vulgar commerce by eagerly granting permits and is thus partly responsible for the degradation of our landscapes. The Order of Architects does nothing. Where is the protest? There are several good initiatives by fellow architects, but they are very limited in relation to the scale of the building sector. There is the danger that these initiatives serve as smoke screen for all these other abuses. Our school needs to come out with forceful action. This school needs to be more angry. But for now, let us return to our safe cocoon, the awarding of prizes for quality architectural designs, fortunately often unruly, but which carefully and modestly integrate themselves into an urban fabric. This architecture contrasts sharply with the situation described before and is therefore, in essence, exemplary for all policymakers. For the fourth consecutive year, you will find a fine selection of this work in the Lucas Architecture book, work by 44 students. Their names are on the cover, and we thank them for their beautiful work and congratulate them. Once again, it was difficult to select within the delectable variety of submitted work and to award 2 prizes in the context of this publication. The small prize, Tanja, goes to third-year students Lieselore Avermaete and Ine van Geenderhuizen.
Hi, thank you very much. We really enjoyed making the drawing, and for us it was in one drawing, it was the thinking process or the whole semester. It was in there, so we were glad you liked it too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In the work of the students Lieselore and In, we were impressed by how certain mechanisms of various well-chosen architectural references are coupled and how they lead to a strong conglomeration of spaces and urban sequences. The strength of the project lies, on the one hand, in the specific choice and the merging of the examples, and on the other hand, in the ingenious way in which they are put together. And then, the small prize Eugeen goes to teachers Yves Malice and Kobe van Praat. The publication, which is dedicated to the 4 winners of this book, is their prize.
Great, thank you very much. I think we can see this as a reward of putting the energy and a lot of ambition in the atelier. It's a very open atelier we do. I think it's a lot about going into dialogue. And we look to the people and to the students, their personalities. We really want to make it a very personal atelier. And we do it already quite some time. So it's a kind of tradition, ongoing tradition, where we keep on finding new elements to introduce and to work on. So it's we started again this year, and I think the results are very diverse, always very personal, very open, and I think that's I like it a lot to teach together with Kobe and Nele and Wes to teach on a very open base in the bachelor's, because I think it's a very important moment in the career of the students.
Thank you. I think probably, okay. The prize for the studio led by Yves Malice and Kobe van Praat, and I think Eugeen pointed at you both, is awarded for the subtle evolution and coloring of a theme developed some years ago. So it's probably, as I understand, not only the studio this year, but it's more the way you had this topic evolving and how you developed that together. Paying attention, so is awarded for the subtle evolution and coloring of a theme developed some years ago, paying attention to the merging and dialogue of 2 aspects that present themselves as opposites: abstract versus specific, small scale versus large scale, detail versus structure. The assignment makes it possible to investigate and interpret scale and integration in the urban fabric of Brussels. May this publication and these prizes be a source of enthusiasm, motivation, and inspiration for the work to come.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I must make a final announcement, or it's not really an announcement, but the book is printed and published, and it's available. You can buy it at Siva. The price is 15 euros. It will be for sale for students and teachers at the reception here in Brussels, also in Ghent. And in Ghent, it's not yet available there because it needs to be sorted out administratively how to make it work. And the price will be 750. But so we hope in the coming days or weeks, it will be available there for sale. And of course, all the people who participated to the books, be it because their work is published there or because they've written some part of it, a book is at your disposition at the reception, so for free. So please go there and get your copy. And sorry, it's not only at the Siva in Brussels, it's also available for sale in the copyright in Ghent. Did I forget something? So thank you for being with us tonight, and congratulations to the prize winners and for all the people who have their work published in the book. We look forward to receive your proposals for the next editions. We already received quite a lot of work from the first semester. There was a deadline which is passed now, but if you would like to send in something, please do not hesitate to do so. And there will be another deadline somewhere in June, I guess, for the second semester work. So we look forward to discovering your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Harrold. Thank you everyone for joining. Congrats to the winners. Please indeed submit all your work for the next editions of this beautiful book, which is becoming a very substantial tradition at the faculty. There's one thing I want to do to close the evening is to bring your attention to the other lectures. So every Thursday evening at 5:30 there is a lecture. Next week it's Maxime Vandewaetere as an artist working with topography, and it's a lecture being curated by the Department of Interior Architecture. Looking forward to see most of you there. Have a good night here from Brugge and there from Brussels. See you next time. Bye.